This lesson will cover creating facings from an existing pattern front or back. So I have opened my size 8 sloper bodice pattern. So I've got my basic front and back bodice. I've went ahead and made 3 copies of my artboard so that I already have front and back bodice on 3 artboards. Once I have done that, go ahead and make sure you do a save as. That way you keep your original size 8 sloper bodice pattern untouched, and then you can name this facings for your assignment, and of course your name or initials in that. Make sure you pay attention to where you are saving it. Go ahead and accept all defaults. All right, now in Illustrator, it's quite easy to make your facings. A facing will mimic the same shape. So let's say in this case, I wanted to mimic the shape of my neckline for my front, and then we'll do one for the back as well. It's very easy to copy that and paste only that part of the pattern that you need for the facing. If you recall from the first pattern making class you had, you actually traced a portion of the pattern across the shoulder, around the neck, and down center front or center back. It just depended on which part we were working with. Here's center back over here. So to do that, we need our direct select tool, which will allow us to select either individual points and or segments. So I want to just kind of demonstrate a little bit of that segment or points. So if I click on a segment, a line in between my points, or actually I do have a anchor point on this curve, I will click once on that anchor point. When you click an anchor point, you actually collect information of the segment to the left and to the right of that anchor point. If I just were to select the segment, I only get that segment between said anchor points at the beginning and end of it. I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, or I'm actually doing the command of copy, which is up here under the edit menu. But keyboard shortcut will be your command key or your control key with the letter C for copy. Now, command or control letter V, like Valentine, will actually paste that curve which I copied. And because I had collected that single anchor point, it got the segment to the left and to the right. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and then I'm going to show you the difference though. If I only get a segment and I copy and I paste, notice I only got the segment, this portion below that anchor point that is on the curve of the neckline. The other thing that's happening too, why you kind of see this line disappear, is that this piece is being filled from end anchor point to the other end, because I can look at my attributes and it's a fill of white, because what I copied had a fill of white. Now, it's not quite enough information that I want. I also need the angle of my shoulder seam and then my center front seam. So again, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. In order to get this portion and both of these segments and part of this segment, I actually need to collect this anchor point. The next one, I'm holding my shift key down to add to my selection. So now I have both those anchor points, and now then that one. I'm going to copy those, command or control C to copy. And then I'm going to paste them. But before I do, I am going to come to my artboard tool, and I'm going to click and drag to make an artboard just above this one here. Go to my select tool to get out of the anchor point tool. I'm sorry, the artboard tool. So now I have a new artboard. This will be my first facings. There we go. And I'm going to paste, Control V, pastes it. Now that is quite large because, as you can see, it collected all of the center front length line, and that is right there. It also has put it on this original artboard down here, that I copied it off of. So if I want that on my other artboard, I need to, I think, cancel. I guess it's not going to let me put it on there, but I really wanted it on that artboard. I'm not quite sure. But right now, we can still shape our facing here. I'm going to add an anchor point right about down here. And actually, let's zoom in so that we can see what we are doing closer by using our grid. I can also change my attribute and make this a nothing fill. That way I can see my grid through here. And I'm going to go ahead and line up my center front at a heavy line of my intersection of the grid. I want to add a point at about 2 inches from that. Up here, I also need to go about 2 inches out. Here's a 2 full inches, but there's a portion, so I'm going to come in a little bit. Now I've added the anchor points. What I don't need is the additional segment past them, so I will use my scissors tool to cut that, and what's highlighted is past that point, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And over here, as I get close to that anchor point, it shows up as an option. I will click it. Right now, what I see highlighted is the facing, and I do not want to delete that. So I will select then this bottom portion and delete that. Now I just need to redraw in a curve here. I want it to mimic this curve as best as I can eyeball on the screen, just for quick purposes. Get your pen tool and add to the open path by getting near it. See the icon change next to your cursor. Single click to connect to that. I'm going to put a point about opposite of that one, kind of eyeballing that I am still 2 inches distant from that edge. Click, hold, and drag, so I'm kind of mimicking this sort of shape to mimic that one. And then before I set my last point, notice it's too straight of a line right here, so I will click, hold, and drag until I kind of like that curve, thinking that it sort of mimics the remainder of this curve. And like I said, in this point, you're just going to kind of eyeball. As long as you have a 2-inch depth, that should be pretty good. If you aren't quite happy with your ending line, you can go back in and edit them. There, I think I'm happier with that. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and let's practice real quick about getting one more over here on the back. Again, I am going to select my anchor points. That is a handle to that point, and then I have this point. Shift key to add to my selection. Keyboard shortcut, Command or Control key, and the C key. And now I'm going to actually come over here and make sure I'm on the right artboard and paste on that artboard. For some reason, it still did not want to paste it on top of that artboard, probably because it's still associated with whatever was on that other piece. Go ahead and change it to a nothing fill and move it into place so that I can use my grid line right in here to then be able to determine my 2 inches where I will add points. 2 inches down from there and approximately 1, 2, which really does end at your dart leg. So that's fine. We will leave that point as it is. I just need to cut the segment over here at this point and then get rid of the section below it. Get my pen tool to finish drawing. I'm going to click, hold, and drag to pull out a control arm from here to start my curve that comes up to here. Single click and pull and drag to, again, get my control arm. I kind of like that curve. I think it mimics this one. When doing curves, try to do as minimal points as you possibly can. It just takes practice. So now I have both my front and my back curve or facings. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. Now then I can do my object path, offset path. Remember 0.5 is our seam allowance we're using. There we go, my inside line. I can change my attributes to the dashed line. There we go. Back facing, I still need to finish with my notations, my grain line, and all of that. My front one here, let me pull it down from the edge there to allow some room for seam allowance. Object, path, offset path, default 1/2 inch, and then the inner line I want to change to a dashed line. But here we have seam allowance on the center front. I'm going to take just a moment then to show you how we can adjust that. And this would go the same for any center front that should be on the fold. We're going to need to break our closed path around here. And to do so, we need our scissors to cut that point and that point. This way we can change the attributes of this line separate from the other stitching line there. As well as we are going to add points pretty much straight up from here on that line, and from here straight down at an anchor point. We should have anchor points there so that we can now cut this off, get rid of that section. This one, I can get rid of that. And now with my pen tool, I can click and connect that as a closed shape. It looks like I need to adjust this one point over. I'm using my keyboard arrows to adjust that. Now center front can be made to look like it is on the fold. So I will single click out, down, and back over. Finish that. With that, I can put my arrows. If you recall, when doing this in pattern making, when you have your grain line with a turn and the arrow touching that line, that is on a folded edge. So I know in the dart manipulation, when you practice doing seam allowance, we didn't worry about adjusting our center front. But there I've shown you, and you can do that to your center front bodice or any edge you want to put on a fold. Now center back, we're leaving the seam allowance on it, assuming that center back will have our opening like a zipper. All right. For your assignment in this, you're going to actually, you can copy one straight up as the bodice is shaped. Whoops. Like so. We didn't make any adjustments. But what if we did want to make an adjustment to center front and maybe even pull this down into a V-neck like that? Maybe even move this out. Now, if I'm going to move this out, I probably need to pay attention to how far I move it out. So let me show you a quick way you can decide how to do that. How about I take a rectangle, give it a nothing fill, and just so that I can see it a little better, I am going to click and drag and give it about a 1-inch square. All right. When I do that, I want to be able to use this as a measuring mark that then I can move to my back and do the measuring mark. So on that path, I want to add an anchor point, but it's going to want to put it on my square because my square is the last thing drawn. It's stacked on top. So I can move that object to the back. So now this line is in front, so when I go to deposit the anchor point, it should be putting it on the bodice. All right. Now I can use this same square to know how far out, by matching it up here, how far out then to put this anchor point on the back as well. So when I go to do those, instead of cutting, I can delete this corner anchor point and it jumps it to the next one in the line. And same thing over here, I can delete this anchor point and notice it changed center back up there. So now then, Alt, get rid of my guideline square that helped me measure how far out to move that. And now then I can do my copying. Make sure you get all the anchor points in a distance so that you get that angle, this segment, and center front. copy and then V. We can move that up, although I forgot to draw my next artboard, but right now that's okay. Using my grid, I can line that up. It's just easier to see a little bit when you have the artboard. I'm going to go ahead and wrap the video right now. I think you have the idea from my first demonstration of how to copy the segments you need, add an anchor point down here so that you can trim it to be 2 inches distance from your sewing edge. That's the average size. You can make them deeper, you can make them a little less if you want, but 2 inches is good. You've already practiced putting seam allowance on them. The artboard tool is the one that allows you to draw additional artboards to put things on, which is handy. Just don't forget your annotations. I'll have a finished picture in the assignment for you to see, but you will do 3 different neck facings, and one of them can be straight off your bodice. The other 2 should be some adjustment to your neckline shape, and create your facings for those. Good luck with it, and if you have any questions, always just let me know.